Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, I'm doing a race commentary on my Zwift Racing League points race on the 2019 Harrogate Circuit. I actually surprised myself in this one, so I wanted to walk through how the race played out and share my thoughts along the way. I'm still pretty new to racing, so if you have any tips or feedback, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Right now, I'm racing in the open development category D with Dirty What's Undiscovered. If you enjoy this kind of race breakdown, considering liking and subscribing. I'll also be uploading the full race without commentary in the next couple of days. Let's get into it.
All right, here we go. So here at the start, I was feeling pretty nervous. I had to rush home after a 12-hour shift and jumped on Zwift with 15 minutes before the race was to start and had no idea how I was going to do. As we start, I knew I wanted to try to stay with the front pack as much as possible. And we can see a guy here going off the front, and I already knew I didn't want to try to chase him down, just wanted to stick with the group I was currently with. At the start of this first climb, I notice I'm likely heavier than most of the riders, so I do my best to stick with the pack. Here, I plan that when I notice I'm starting to fall a bit behind, I give a bit more effort to try to stay relatively close to the front. Here, I was pretty nervous at the 4% hill. I have a lot of doubt in myself and felt if any of them would have made a push, others would have as well, and I likely would have fallen behind. But luckily, everyone stayed pretty steady, and I managed to stick with the front. Okay, so I should probably keep it for now then. Throughout all the descents, I knew I'd have quite a bit of an advantage because of my weight. So that's when I really decided to take my time to catch my breath, get my heart rate down, and to recoup, and as well as to just catch up with anybody that might have been in front of me. Here, after any of the descents, I would always try to push my watts a little bit just to be able to propel at the start, especially at a hill like this, and then that way it'll try to keep me up to the front so that I can stay with the pack, and then I could kind of stay with the group and just draft within them. For about the next 7 or so minutes. Not a whole lot happens here. The group pretty much stays together and we hit a descent, but I think everybody's just trying to conserve their energy for the Yorkshire KOM. At this point, I was looking at the Yorkshire KOM coming up. I've never been on it before, so I was still pretty curious where I'd be using my feather for it. I also knew I needed to get my heart rate down a bit, and I did my best to keep with the pack, but also not expend as much effort or energy to get ready for this hill. At the start of the Yorkshire KOM, I knew I had some speed coming into the climb, so I wanted to use that to my advantage and push for at least an additional 5 to 10 seconds on the initial climb. And as I'm going up the hill, I also noticed that there was a flatter section that was coming up with another orange-red area, where that second area would probably where I use my feather. I got worried here when I noticed two people were pushing a little harder, and one with his feather, and my heart rate was already close to 160. But I also knew that I had my feather that I could still use for the second part, and then I'd have a nice downhill. So if I could just stay close, I could probably try to catch up once I was over the hill. Here, I decided to use my feather while still on the yellow portion, thinking while I have a little bit of speed, just prior to getting onto the steeper part, that would probably help a little bit more to kind of propel me. But not sure if I should have just used it a bit later here in order to help me get closer to the top. Ooh. I wasn't too worried about these two in front of me. I knew they were lighter because of how easy it seemed like they rode past me while going up the hill, that I figured with some effort I'd likely catch them on the downhill. Also, I probably used the arrow a little too early. For the next little bit here, not a whole lot happens. I just pretty much do my best to stick with the guys that are around me. I fall behind sometimes, other times I catch up, and it's just a little bit of a cat and mouse right now. Started to get a little worried here again. Just after the sprint, my heart rate was already in the 160s and still had 2.5 kilometers to go, and the other two guys were slipping ahead. When I got to Lauren, he seemed to be holding pretty steady, so I decided to stick with him for a little bit to draft on and off to catch my breath and to get my heart rate down again. Sandifer, however, I noticed was getting further ahead, and there wasn't much descent I could use to catch up to him. For me. At this point, I felt the guys in front probably didn't push this little hill very hard, and I saw that there was a little downhill afterwards. So I decided to push up this hill pretty hard and hope to catch them, and I did. My heart rate was going quick, but now there was a descent and I could rest a bit. towards the end of lap one, pretty much all of us kind of stuck together. We did notice Hofstetter and Alganmi were just slightly ahead, but I don't think any of us wanted to push to try to catch up to them. So we just kind of stuck together until the end of this lap. At the start of the second lap, I noticed that the people in first and second place were quite ahead by about 20 or so seconds, and sixth and seventh position were quite a ways back too. So I knew my best bet from here on in was to stick with Hugh and Sandifer. Here, I noticed Hugh is slightly getting further ahead, but I saw the steeper part coming up, and I knew if I tried to push him now, I felt like I'd bonk when the hill came up. So I decided to stay back and stick with Sandifer. So where he went, I would go. While going up this hill, I noticed the guy behind me wasn't overly pushing, was probably just trying to conserve energy. So I tried my best to put some effort, but just enough to where my heart rate would slowly start to come down and to not overexert myself on this hill. This may have been a silly thing to do since he's a lighter rider, but I decided to put some effort towards the end of this hill. I feel like he was getting maybe a little bit too comfortable, and I needed him to use up some of his energy. Good plan, bad plan, probably bad since he passes me just as we get to the top of the hill and ends up staying in front of me while I try to catch up to him. At this point, I catch back up to Sandifer, and we spent the next little while just staying with each other. I'm sure we were both exhausted and wanting to catch our breaths and focus on the upcoming KOM again. So now we're back to the KOM, and I have a lot of speed going into it. So I use that once again to my advantage to stand and pedal so I can try to stay in front and not fall too far behind the guy with me, since again, he is a lighter rider, and I was worried that he would float past me. Here, I noticed that he's just doing 1.5 to 2 watts per kilo. So I'm thinking, okay, he's also pretty tired at this point and probably won't do any huge pushes. So I do as I did before and I keep up a decent pace, but I go at my pace so I can kind of rest and not overexert while going up the hill. At this point, I see a slight gap happening between me and the other racer. So I up the pace a bit in the hopes that he gets worried about it and starts to exert himself to catch up to me. And as a result, tires him out more as we get closer to the end of the race. By this point, I'm pretty exhausted, but I didn't recognize Xander is pushing it and is now at around 5 watts per kilo, which surprises me. So I give it some more effort just to try to stay on his wheel. Takes me a few bursts, but I managed to catch up to him as we get to the top of the KOM, and now I get a bit of rest. Ah. While going up this little section, he doesn't seem to really be pushing past me, and I'm taking that as a clue that he's almost gassed. But unfortunately, I'm getting pretty exhausted too. Okay, right there. Oh, God. One up 3 kilometers for me. Nice. So close, but it's just the hill. Here, I get surprised that he's pushing it for the sprint. It's my first points race, so I have no idea if either of us get points for whoever crosses the line first. So I end up pushing it and managed to hit 8 watts per kilo somehow for just a second. But that's enough to get ahead of him. And just as he starts to catch up, I just put a bit more effort and crossed the line first, which was exciting. Obviously, that was a hard effort. My heart rate is up, and we're pretty close to the end. So I'm once again worried I won't have enough power in me to do any more hard pushes if he decides to. We're at the final kilometer, so I'll let this final bit play out. Bless you. Fourth place, let's go. Fourth. Super happy with my final effort, being able to push it. Now I just had to take some time to focus and try to breathe.
All right, everyone, that's it for today's race. Thanks so much for watching and following along. I usually stream or post videos most days, so if you enjoyed this one, hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts or tips for improving my racing. See you in the next ride.